5:30 p.m. I would also like to thank you for listening to Community Radio on WGRN LP 94.1 FM, Columbus. I'd like to welcome back our listeners. Today we have a treat for you. We have Paula Neal. She is a famous author of Gabby, I'm Going to Have a Good Day. Paula was on one of our previous shows, and we had such a good time. And she had so much information when we got into talking about Gabby and Gabby bullying. Paula was able to share a lot with us. So we asked Paula if she would be willing to come back at a future date so that we could continue this discussion. And so, hi, Paula.
Hi.
Of course, I have to say hello to my brother, Mr. Ernest Kelly. Hello, Ernie.
Hello, please. Hi, Paula.
Hi, Ernie.
Good talking to you again.
You too.
Yeah. So what, Paula, could you give our listeners a recap of what took place at your last visit when we kind of talked about Gabby, I'm Going to Have a Good Day, and then tell us kind of like what's currently going on?
Yes. So my first book is titled I'm Gonna Have a Good Day, and it's about a preschool bully named Gabby. Now, in the book, I never mentioned the word bully, but outside of the book, I call her what it is. She's a bully. She likes to have her kind of day at the expense of the other children by teasing and pranking them. And each time the teacher, Mrs. Beadle, tries to correct her behavior, she has a series of meltdowns where she's screaming, I'm going to have a good day. And unfortunately, this is a true story, but those are her meltdowns when she can't get her way. And so towards the end of the book, almost, she leaves a lot of the kids, in hurt and in tears. And then one day they get so tired of her, I'm going to have a good day, they take a soft stance against her, trying to stop her. But then there's a cliffhanger for book number 2.
So could you tell our listeners about how long you've been writing books or when you got started to deciding to write a book?
The funny thing is, I started writing books when I was a child. But as I became older, adulthood came into play. And, it wasn't back then, how should I put it? It was easier to tell my mom and dad, I'm going to be a teacher versus I'm going to be an author. So, you sort of forget your talent and give in to what you think you should be doing based upon other people's realities. So it wasn't until about 5 years ago I returned to writing, and that's when I came up with the storyline for I'm Going to Have a Good Day. So it took me 5 years to write this book. So it's like about 30 years later. I decided to write my book since childhood, and it took me 5 years to write this book. I'm going to say really 2 years to write it and 3 years to find the right illustrator for it, because my book is a multicultural book. The lead protagonist is an African-American girl, and it was very important for me to find an illustrator that could represent children in the book that look like today, versus a stereotype that we see in our kids, unfortunately, a lot of books of color.
I didn't even think that was a difference, but since you said it, there is a difference in that.
Yes. I've been a preschool director for over 25 years, and unfortunately, things have gotten a little better as far as, being able to find books with children of color, but it hasn't gotten that better. And even now, when I've been searching for a lot more books to add to our library at our school, we pretty much have exhausted the book that's online that has pictures of our kids that we would be proud to put in front of them, but equally important that the kids would be able to say, hey, that looks like me. So rather than me continue to complain about there not being enough books, children's books of color, and on top of that not being enough quality, I decided to, either to put up, or shut up, So my goal right now is to make sure that this first book of mine is very successful. I've already completed book number 2, but my goal going forward is to have a series of books about children of color, especially African-American children, just living everyday life. Our kids have birthday parties, they have pets, so just our kids living everyday life and being proud to see themselves doing that in the book.
Hey, how much of the second book did you say you had written when you published the first one?
I published the first book in June of 2019. I finished the second one literally the first of this year. I came up with the concept less than a year ago, based upon how much feedback I was getting on the current book. And so I set myself down and really committed to having the second book finished in time for it to be released in 2021. So I'm beyond the rough draft. I literally have the second book finished. And I've been testing it out at different schools before we went on lockdown as far as schools closing down because of the virus. And it's been, the response from the kids has been great, but shocking. A lot of the things in the book that they weren't expecting. So good job, Paula. It wasn't predictable.
Well, the first one was, I must say I enjoyed it because I told you I had purchased one for one of my granddaughters. And like you talked before, and I changed up the characters, to make it kind of more personal. So I'm really looking forward to the next one.
Yes, I think you're really going to like it. It's very unpredictable. I still gave people what they're looking for, but you're going to definitely go on the journey with this one. You're in for a huge surprise.
Is this going to be Gabby again? Is this going to be?
Yes, definitely. It's part 2. So Gabby will continue to be the lead protagonist in this second book because I definitely want my audience to find out what happened the next day when she returned to school.
Oh, that's great. I cannot wait.
Arnie, my mom, she's on top of me. She was like, with the first book, she was like, Paula, this girl is bad. She was like, in the next book, you're going to have to make sure she has a good day. And I'm like, Mommy, you understand that this is not a real character. This is a book, right? And the way she talks about the book is like she's literally talking about an actual child if you didn't know that it was a book.
And that makes the book so you're able to relate to the character. So that's what makes it so relatable to everyone is that these are how you wrote the book. It is as though you experienced it or you through yourself or through someone else in life.
Mm-hmm.
It's how Gabby acted. It's how our own grandchildren and stuff act. And then the parents even act like that.
Yes. I mean, what parent at what school doesn't tell a child, please, honey, I need you to have a good day? That's why you see the tagline every morning at every school. Please have a good day, please.
Please don't let me get no phone call from the office.
Exactly. But the weird thing is that some parents have caught on to it and some haven't, but understandably, is that when kids hear us say, please have a good day, in their mind, they are having a good day. It's not the kind of day that we want them to have, but everything that makes them happy, they're doing it. So when you're telling the child, I need you to have a good day, you have to be very specific on what they're doing that's not making it a good day and tell them exactly what it should look like. Because in their head, once again, they're thinking, I'm having fun, so I am having a good day. But you keep punishing me for it.
Wow.
I don't think my mom would have been quite that. She'd have been a little bit more hardcore. Like, boy, don't let me have to come up here for you.
Exactly. That's true. I grew up that way too. And it's so funny. Someone asked me, "Was Gabby me?" And I always say this to people. Listen, I said, I was raised in the 70s and the 80s, and I was like, no offense, but my mom was African American. Do you think I was allowed to talk back? Like, no, that's not me. There was no bribing me to have ice cream. I'll get ice cream if I have a good day. There was no bribery. You're lucky to be alive. And you got back home after your teacher told on you.
Yeah, exactly. But if I could say, though, the subject is so relevant because I know that you heard about the little boy that was getting bullied in Australia because his name was Corona.
Oh my God! No.
Yeah, he was getting bullied. And Mr. Rogers found out about it. Tom Hanks befriended him, sent him one of them old typewriters that I know you didn't have one of these typewriters, Paula, because it's one of them ones you see back in the black and white movies, where you had to like hen peck. sent him a really old one. So yeah, his name is Corona, getting bullied because kids, I guess they just didn't have an understanding of the virus and how it wasn't really him that did that.
Is that why Tom Hanks and his wife Rita were in Australia to visit the young boy? Do you know that?
I don't think they were there. This actually happened after he got out of quarantine. He found out about it. They were there, I think, before on, vacation or something related to their work, and he found out about it afterwards.
Oh. Paula, you and Ernie were talking about seeing you on TV. What's up with that? Where were you on TV?
Well, I work for the YWCA of Columbus, and I'm the program administrator for our Safe and Sound Child Care program, which provides child care solely to children that are experiencing temporary homelessness. And so I was interviewed on how the crisis has affected families that are, who can't do social distancing, who can't stay at home because they're in a homeless shelter, and then but equally important, how it has impacted the children who reside at the shelter but can't go to school. And at one point, school was that one stable thing they had in their life. And then with also a lot of this education now being online, when you're homeless, you don't have access to the internet, let alone an iPad or a computer or what have you. We talked about how IGS Energy donated about 25 iPads to our students so that and this Wi-Fi built into it as well, how it allowed our students to log online to continue their education. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I was teasing her because they didn't put her name down there. Normally when they're interviewing somebody, they put their names down there. They didn't put Paula's name down there. All right, where's her name at? It's doing it.
But I made sure my book was in the background.
That's important.
Yes.
If you guys excuse me for a minute, we need to take an identification break.
Hi, this is Ernest Kelly with the Faith Thomas Foundation. You're listening to The Sale on 94.1 FM, WGRN, and WGRN.org worldwide. Listen to us every Wednesday night at 7:30 p.m.
When you was writing the second book, did you have a big eraser?
A big eraser?
Did you have a big eraser like you had to do different rewrites, or did you pretty much keep everything that you wrote down?
First draft, second draft.
There was many drafts because one of the main reasons the first book is so successful because it's the language of the kids, and therefore it's so authentic. And so when I was doing the second book, I had to be very careful that I stuck to that brand, making sure that this was about how the kids think, how the kids speak. And so there was times I wanted to correct grammar. It's like, no, that's not how she said it. But so I would say in that sense, just making sure that it was always authentic to the kids, how they think and speak. But I really have to admit that because I'm so close to it and I know how kids at this age really think and behave and why they do the things they do and say the things they do, this second book was a lot easier than the first one. It came out like it was very fluid for me. And I also think what helped me was, I'm sorry.
Why do you think that was?
Because of the input, the feedback I received from children from the first book. Whenever I do a story read, I always spend a lot of time after the story read asking the kids about, what was this book about? What do you think is going to happen in the second book? And asking those kind of concrete questions kept me in line as to how kids, typically would act versus how I want them to act. I wanted to be clear that I wasn't trying to correct her behavior because that was the right thing to do. I wanted the kids to see her as them. Kids can't change their behavior overnight. Adults don't change their behavior overnight. So I didn't want Gabby to be perfect, but I wanted them to see that she could get there, over time. And I think just listening to the children's feedback, that's how the second book was so much easier to write.
Let me ask you.
Because the first book I had no audience. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. What was you going to say?
The first book, I wasn't able to talk to an audience of children. I had to write from my experience. The second one, I had an audience that helped me come up with a good concept for the second one. And I think that's the reason why it was so fluid, so easy for me to write it and finish it in less than 6 months. But like I said, in January this past year, I sat down, I nailed it, and then literally on the 1st of January, I was done.
That's impressive. Now, when you're writing these children's books, I must say, Paula, you do have the language down. That's a little scary.
Oh, my God. I'm very passionate about my field. Very passionate. I love what I do. And, things that the kids really, really say, I have to keep reminding myself, it's a children's book, Paula. Can't be too realistic, but it's definitely their language, their behavior, their experience.
I have a question for you, Paula. When do you plan on releasing this book, and where can our listeners purchase this second book?
I'm going to release the second book in 2021, early 2021. And it's going to be at the current stores here in Columbus, Black Art Plus on Parsons Avenue, Gramercy Books in Bexley, Cover to Cover in Upper Arlington, and then also online on for my website, paulajohnsonneal.com, and Amazon.com as well. Amazon.com and then paulajohnsonneal.com. Also, I was going to release it towards the end of this year, but I changed my mind because I felt like I was caving in to what other people wanted me to do. Everybody wants to know what happens in the second book. Does she have a good day or not? So I think I was caving in to what other people wanted me to do versus allowing this book to be the baby first and then letting it take off like it should, the Denise. Because I really want this first book to sell the second book, but I also want everyone to know about it. And I can't do that unless I allow it to be the baby for a while.
Pandemic play into, you pushing the date back or anything like that?
No, it hasn't. It was definitely finished before all of this happened. It definitely hasn't played into it.
Oh, okay.
Since Gabby I know that you said you don't use the word bully, but since she was kind of aggressive in her actions, what are some of the signs that you have recognized in young kids as far as bullying go?
Okay. So the first thing I think people need to understand is that when we say bullying, especially in early childhood, my book is specifically a target to, ages 3 up to age 8. And a lot of times in early childhood, people do not believe that bullying starts there. That includes some of my colleagues, but it's definitely unwanted behavior. And for instance, in a preschool classroom, it looks just like this. One of my friends who's a preschool teacher at a more upscale preschool program, one of the kids in the preschool room was walking around the room telling a little girl that she could not speak the way that she was speaking. The little girl was speaking obviously another language that was not English, but she was speaking her native tongue to another student who spoke that language as well. So she kept following the little girl around the classroom saying, "You can't speak like that. You can't speak like that." And then the teacher heard the little girl asking her, why can't I speak like this, And then eventually the teacher intervened, and the little girl said, "My mommy and daddy said you have to speak English." And so even though in her heart she may not know the harm she was causing to that child, that bullying behavior was, number one, it was something that was taught to that child, but the behavior that she was giving to her classmate was unwanted verbal aggression. And another type of behavior that you see in preschool is a lot of exclusion. Typically when kids say, if you don't give me that toy, then I'm not going to be your friend, But what it looks like now is that when kids do that, they direct it at certain kids, and they'll use it. Could be a child that doesn't have as many friends in the classroom. So here comes Paula over to Felice, and I'm demanding this toy from you, and I'm saying, "Hey, Felice, I want this toy, and if you don't give it to me, I'm not going to be your friend." But not only do I say that, but then I start getting other people in the classroom to not be your friend, so we're excluding you. This is literally happening in preschool, and now you, Felice, you're breaking down. But the reason why the teachers and we know it's bullying because you keep targeting this same child over and over again, but you don't do it to other kids who's more vocal or equally vocal or more aggressive than you. But you'll pick on little Felice.
That's really sad when you kind of think about it. And it seems like it really ramps up about middle school.
Unfortunately, you hear a lot more about it in middle school, but it really ramps up in early childhood. We don't nip it in the bud when we see it too often. If we nip it in the bud when we see it, then less kids will enter kindergarten acting like that. And in the early childhood years, we want to think that everything they say and do is funny, and it's not. Or we want to excuse it as, they're learning how to enter and sustain play. No, there is some blatant bullying going on in early childhood programs, and then there's some precursor behaviors going on into childhood. And it's the professional, it's the teachers and directors' responsibility to make sure that they head that behavior off before it gets too worse. And then, unfortunately, you have kids that are truly mirroring the personalities and behaviors of their parents. And you notice when you try to talk to a parent, they come back to you in a tone that you go, oh, I see why Paula acts the way she does.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Because all they hear is you attacking them versus you're trying to explain to them why their child's behavior is not appropriate.
What made you pick that subject matter, and I'm going to have a good day?
Because the face of bullying is of middle school and high schoolers. We have children in elementary that are committing suicide because they're being bullied. But then we know we've been too quiet in the early childhood field and not stepping up and saying, hey, y'all, it really starts with us. And so when I was a preschool teacher, I saw it. I see it as a director too. But this story that I wrote came about when I was a pre-K teacher. It happened in my classroom, and I had to, try to deflect it as much as I could. But I think when we genuinely want to solve a problem, we have to get to the root of it. And if we don't get to the root of it, we're not going to solve it. And it definitely starts in early childhood. And so I wanted bullying's face to change a little bit. And I wanted people to realize and start having conversations about the early years. Even though it might look ugly, we want it to look pretty. It's not all pretty.
So you wanted to make a change and impact.
Exactly.
Is teasing be a form of bullying?
Teasing is totally different from bullying. Teasing is a safer behavior, meaning that, Ernie, you and I are friends, and you and I are, I'm pretty sure you're familiar with the mama joke, okay? When we grew up, we used to be outside telling the mama jokes to each other, or
right.
with people, thank you, that doesn't. But guess what? You and I have a relationship, so we're not going to go too far because, sometimes it might be true. But you and I have a relationship, and then if it looks like you're hurting me, or if I tell you to stop, you're going to stop. Because your goal is not to inflict any kind of harm. It's just a relationship that you and I have that we can tease each other about simple things. Also, teasing is not repeated over time. It might happen one time and it is done with. But once again, it's done amongst friends. Whereas bullying, it happens over and over again, and the true intent is to inflict harm or to cause harm.
I am glad that you made that distinction because I was sitting here thinking about that because I think about when I was a kid and, we was on recess and, just teasing each other and that kind of stuff. I kept wondering, was I bullying my friends back then? I'm glad you made that distinction. I think that's important.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And bullying is it's a power imbalance too, and it's usually young kids or a child with maybe some kind of form of disability or anything. They're usually targeted. With teasing, you don't target certain people. These are your friends that you're making jokes about, and then it's over with. No one's crying or trying to hurt each other. you tease, you forget about it, you move on. Bullying is every single day. It's intentional. The kids repeat it overly, but it's also a power over another child.
I like that part right there when you're saying it's a power thing over somebody, over someone else. Yeah, I like that. Mm-hmm. That's a good way to explain it to kids, I think, is point that distinction out.
Exactly. Paula, is there anything that you would like to say to our listeners before we close out this session today?
I just want to first thank you for allowing me to be on your show today. I really appreciate it. I love speaking to you and Ernie. Thank you so much. And to your audience, if you have a child or know of a child that is struggling with bullying, or you are a teacher, what have you, and you want to start a conversation with children as young as 3 years old and older about bullying, my book is an excellent book to introduce that topic to young children, because one of the things I've learned towards the end of this book is that even though Gabby's behavior is so inappropriate, all of the kids, not one child has ever agreed with her behavior. Every child that has given feedback wants her to be a better person. They understand that her behavior is inappropriate. And then another thing is I mentioned that the word bully is never mentioned in this book because, number one, the word bully is never used by preschoolers. It's used by kindergartners and older children. Preschool kids describes her behavior. But if you listen to their definition of her behavior, it's the bully is the word that defines it. So it's a great book in which kids can see themselves in Gabby's behavior, but at the same time, like I said, it's a great way to introduce it to young children, but in a fun, entertaining way.
Could you please provide our listeners when your second book is going to be released again and where they can get more information regarding purchasing your first book, I'm Going to Have a Good Day?
Okay, definitely. For my first book, please log on to my website, www.paulajohnsonneal.com. Neal is spelled Neal, but www.paulajohnsonneal.com. If you log on to my website, I'll autograph your book, and I'll ship it directly to you. Also, you can find it on Amazon.com. As far as my second book, it's going to be out hopefully by January of 2021. February at the latest. But once again, if you log onto my website at any given time, you can stay up to date on the current book and the upcoming book. And then also from my website, you can access my Facebook page as another way to keep up to date on my book.
We definitely would love to have you come back on the show because you know that we enjoy you. We always have a good time when you do come. The conversation is always good. And the conversation and all regarding, young kids and the behavior of young kids never gets dull, and it's never tiring to hear, So I think that what you talk about or what you zero in on is really important for listeners and give ideas to the parents for them to think about and something to talk about. So we thank you for coming on. Mr. Ernest Kelly, thank you for being with me today.
Oh, no problem. But I do want to say Paula's book I highly recommend people get. I'm Going to Have a Good Day because it's well written, well illustrated, and believe me, your kids are going to really be intrigued by it. And they're really going to learn a lesson in it. Because like I said, my granddaughter, we was having some issues with her, and it was great, great learning experience for us. So, yeah, I highly recommend people go out and purchase it.
Thank you, Ernie.
With that being said, I want to thank the both of you.
So have a good day.
And peace out.
The Faith Thomas Foundation would like to thank you for listening to The Cell. We broadcast on WGRN 94.1 FM. Every Wednesday night at 7:30 p.m. You can also stream us live on Wednesdays at 7:30 p.m. on WGRN 94.1. For more information on the Faith Thomas Foundation, please visit our website, Facebook, and follow us on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is Faith Thomas FDN.